Hi, I'm JP, you're watching the Coffee Channel, and today we're going to be talking about chaff. Now, what on earth is chaff, you may ask? Well, the chaff is the skin of the coffee bean. Most of it gets burnt away and then filtered out in the coffee roasting process, but some of it remains in the middle of your bean. And you'll often see it as the white parchment-like substance that's in the centre of your bean, and if you split a coffee bean apart, you'll see it there. It's kind of papery. Now, you may wonder, does that affect the flavour of the coffee? And some baristas would say, yes, it does. In fact, Benny Wong, who was competing in the final of the World Brewers Cup in 2016, removed all of the parchment from his coffee beans before brewing his coffee for the judges. Now, it's a very laborious job. Does it make a difference? He thought it did. What we're going to do today is we're going to do that process for you and see if it's worth your while spending 20 minutes on every cup of coffee to get a better tasting brew. Let's have a look at the bean itself first and see what we need to do. Down here we've got some coffee beans, and as you can see, the parchment is a white material that's in the centre of the bean. It's slightly darker in natural coffees usually, and obviously the darker roasted coffees will have less parchment in them. But we're looking at a light roast coffee here from Gardelli. You can clearly see the parchment here. It almost looks like an insect's wing or something like that. It's a thin papery substance, and if you taste it, it tastes like eating very thin paper. Not particularly pleasant. Now the thing is, it takes an extraordinary amount of time to get this parchment out of each bean. In fact, I'd say it's probably sort of 20-30 seconds per bean, and there are hundreds of beans in one brew of coffee. So is it worth the effort? We're going to remove all the parchment from 16 grams of this coffee. We're going to brew it, and then we're going to blind taste test it against a 16 gram coffee produced with beans that have the parchment in. And if we can perceive any difference, then we'll know whether it's worthwhile or not. Okay, so I have measured out 16 grams of beans here, slightly more than 16 grams just to account for any retention in the grinder. Now I'm going to begin the laborious process of splitting each coffee bean apart and removing the chaff. Now this is a bit of a long-winded job, and actually I'm actually quite hopeless at it. Some beans are easier than others. So I'm going to split a couple there, and there we can see we can get a bit of the chaff out. Right, this is going to take a while, so I'm going to ask for the help of one of my colleagues here. He's going to come in and assist me on this. Okay, voila.
2 hours later.
Okay, so after that rather laborious process, which I wouldn't recommend, we've got our coffee beans separated from the chaff. Got 16 grams there, which we're going to brew in a second. We've got our normal 16 grams of the same coffee, which is a Gardelli Mizungo, which I find myself using quite a lot in these videos, but it's great coffee. We know how to dial it in. Got it tasting really good. And we've got the chaff. I may make something with this to just see how bad it tastes, but we'll come back to that in a minute. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these 2 espressos, then one of my colleagues is going to turn them round, place them in a different place, and I'm going to do a blind taste testing to see if I can work out which one's the better. Right, so I've brewed my 2 espressos. This one here is the one made with standard coffee. This one here is the one made with the coffee that's had the parchment removed. Now they've both been made to the same recipe on the same grind. For those who are interested, I've gone for 16 grams in, so 16 grams of coffee into the grinder. On my UK, it's a setting of just below 1.5. Then I've extracted it in 28 seconds for 36 grams of actual espresso out. and they're pretty close to each other. You can never hit it dead on 36, but I think there's about half a gram difference between the two. So not enough to make a difference to the flavour of the coffee. One thing that was noticeable as I made it is the one without the parchment produced a bit more crema. Even though it was the second one, you'd expect the crema to die down a bit on the first one by the time you made the second one, but there wasn't much difference in time, so there's a little bit more crema. I don't know why that would be the case. It may just be variations. Okay, so let them cool for a little bit. I'm going to get one of my colleagues in here to turn them round and put them in a random order so that I can't see which one is which. So I'm going to turn away from the camera now, and my colleague is going to change it right now. Is that done?
Yep.
Okay, ready to go. Right, so I'm going to start with the one on the left. My left, your right. So it smells good. It's that Mazungo sort of dark chocolate cherries, that sort of flavour that your Black Forest Gatto that you get with this made as filter coffee. It comes out straight out with espresso as well, but it's a bit more intense. Okay, so plenty of sort of sparkling acidity there. Yeah, it's really quite good. Nice aroma, nicely balanced. Right, let's see if this one tastes any different. It's a little bit more of an aftertaste with this coffee here. There's like a little bit more of a bitterness or maybe an acidity. Let's try again. Okay, there's a bit of like balsamic sort of acidity in there, maybe balsamic vinegar and a nice quality balsamic. That's tricky. To be fair, there's not actually a lot of difference between the two. It's not noticeably one is massively better than the other. It may be the case that it's more pronounced in filter coffee, but I would have thought it would be the most pronounced in espresso because you're making a very short beverage that's very concentrated. So any slight discrepancy in the coffee itself should make a bigger difference than with filter coffee. That said, the strength can often overcome some of your taste buds because it's actually a very concentrated drink, so sometimes that can make those discrepancies harder to find. Let's just try one more time. Okay. Okay, so now this one tastes slightly more acidic. I actually think that this one is the one without the parchment, but I may be wrong here. Is that correct?
You're correct.
It is correct.
Well, there you go. So hopefully we've removed any sort of confirmation bias there, or any sort of reading into things you think might happen. But actually the difference was very, very slight. This seems to taste a touch better. There was a touch less bitterness, maybe a touch less sort of acidity. They're made at the same brew ratio and the same time with the same water on the same machine within a few seconds of each other. So I don't think there was any difference in that respect. I think it made a very small difference to the taste of the coffee. Was it worth the 15 minutes of dicking around with the coffee beans? No, I'd say. So it's probably not worth your time unless you're going to do this in some sort of competition where you're looking for very marginal gains. Okay, if you have any questions or any interesting points about this video, or if you have anything you'd like us to cover in a future video, please comment in the comments below. Like and subscribe us if you like this video, and I'll see you again soon.